We're also going to be joined now by NFL media senior writer and reporter Jeffri Chadiha, as he's had a boatload of content that he's just churning out on NFL.com, and a lot of it includes Buffalo Bills players. So we wanted to get Jeffri on to kind of work our way through some of that stuff. And one of the pieces, Jeffri, you mentioned Dalton Kincaid as a young NFL player whose development is going to be critical to kind of propel the Bills here in 2025, hopefully over the hump to kind of get to the promised land. That's the hump they're trying to get over. We know other teams have maybe smaller and less loftier goals. And there is a history here, too, Jeffri, of players in year three really taking off. Spencer Brown's an example, Taron Johnson. There's a long list of players here who have really hit those marks in year three. Tell us why you feel Dalton Kincaid is ripe for that.
Well, one, he's a really good player. And after his first year, I was excited to see what happened with him in year two. And as you guys know, injuries played a key role in that with the collarbone and the knee injury that affected him well into the playoffs. But, to go from where he was as a rookie when he had 73 catches down to 44 catches, I think he's ready for a bounce back. And I love the opportunity he has within this offense, playing with a quarterback who is as improvisational as Josh Allen is, with so many other weapons. A guy who can move, a big tight end who can move around and play in different spots. I felt as if he had caught that pass in the AFC Championship game, they had a pretty good chance of winning that game. It didn't happen for him, so there's motivation there. But I think ultimately, like you said, third year, he's coming back from injury. He has talent. I think big things lie ahead for Dalton Kincaid.
What are your thoughts about the tight end role in an offense like this one? We had never really seen it here in Buffalo, where I'm finger quoting, this everybody eats thing, right? Where we didn't know any of these guys. Khalil Shakir was an unknown commodity. Keon was a rookie, and Mac Hollins was just a guy for like 8 years of his career, right? So we didn't know how effective this could be. And now, obviously, the philosophy's been proven to be good, especially when you got Josh throwing it. What are your thoughts about the tight end role in that, and what would that look like if, what kind of numbers are we talking about? What's it going to look like to the naked eye if a guy like Kincaid does have a breakout year?
Oh, I could easily see him being a 1,000-yard receiver and getting back to the reception number he had as a rookie in the 70s, maybe the 80s. I live in Kansas City, and I've seen, I'm not trying to say he's going to be the next Travis Kelce, but I've seen how Travis Kelce has operated with a quarterback who works in the same fashion that Josh Allen does, which is he can spread the field deep. He can get out of the pocket and make plays. When you have a guy who can operate in the middle of the field like that, like Kelce does, it's hell on a defense. And so, those guys you just mentioned, the Khalil Shakurs, I think Josh Palmer could have a big year in this offense. I think Keon Coleman could show up big in his second year. All these guys benefit from a quarterback who can move around. The running backs as well. And so for me, that's why I like his potential within his offense, because he's athletic. Kincaid can move around. You can put him in different spots. You get him isolated on linebackers and safeties. It's an advantage for him. And Josh Allen will find you. And so for me, if you've got all those advantages going in your favor and you're motivated, again, I think that bodes well for Dalton Kincaid.
Another young player on this roster was part of a youth movement on the defensive side of the ball. Max Hairston, their top pick, who we were just watching on the practice field today. And I got to tell you, Jeffri, might have the smoothest hip flip I've seen in a long time. He is really a fluid mover out there, and we all know he's, fast as a hiccup. But I think people in an ideal world know he's got to nail down that starting outside job opposite Benford if this team is going to realize the ultimate prize as well. And I know you kind of covered that on a list of, rookies that got to show up in year one. He's on that list.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I know he was one of the later picks in the first round, but just, again, the opportunity to make an impact is huge for him. Going back to that AFC Championship game, I thought if Christian Benford had not gone out with a concussion, the Bills probably win that game, because you don't see Xavier Worthy going crazy. You don't see some of those big plays down the field. But to have a number two guy who has that speed, which they've missed in this secondary, which has that big playability, that lockdown ability. If you have two guys in your secondary like that, it makes life a lot easier for everybody. And so, I think, I know Tre'Davious White and Dane Jackson are in the mix there in that competition, but this is the guy who needs to make it happen. And I still feel like when Tre'Davious White went down a couple years ago, that was a huge underrated blow to this team's hopes of winning a championship. So if Hairston can be that guy, it's a win for the Bills.
Can you equate that? I mean, I know that, whenever you have a top pick, and everybody does, they got that guy. Some of them are very high at the top of the draft. Sometimes teams trade out of the first round. But the first guy you get to pick in the draft always has expectations attached to him. Other than guys like Maxwell Hairston, give us an idea around the league of some guys you think for the team. The teams really need this guy to be good. Certainly the Bills are deep and they're talented. Hairston can really help them, but they're going to be good with or without any one player they have outside the MVP. Give us an idea of some other teams who really need a guy to come through.
Well, look at the team that the Bills beat in the playoffs, the Denver Broncos, and R.J. Harvey, for example. They're running back in the second round. It could be huge for them. They lost Javonte Williams and need a run game to help out Bo Nix in that offense and that great defense. So he certainly is going to have some high expectations. Trey Harris, a wide receiver, went in the second round to the Chargers, is in that boat as well. They needed help at receiver, didn't get it a lot in free agency, just went out and got Mike Williams and didn't use a first-round pick on a receiver, so he's going to be essential to what they do. I think those are two players that come to mind. Now, Travis Hunter, I think, is in that boat a little bit as well because Jacksonville may feel as if his impact on both sides of the football can help them rise up in a weak AFC South. So those are names that come to mind immediately for me. It's just there's a lot of opportunity out there for rookies to make a difference. And I'll even throw Matthew Golden in for the Packers, who was their first pick in 20-some years. That's a lot of pressure on a guy, but again, they need help for Jordan Love.
I know that one of your colleagues, Eric Edholm, had the Bills at the top of his list among non-Lombardi Trophy holding teams as the most likely to finally hoist that thing. You had the Bills on a list of contenders to dethrone the Eagles as Super Bowl champs, number 2 on your list, behind the Chiefs, which is a different list entirely. So hopefully I made that clear to our listeners. Yeah. You still have the Chiefs as top contenders. Is that largely because they've been there and know what it takes to get there? I'm just curious, what's your delineation between the Chiefs and the Bills at this point as these two rosters stand currently constituted?
Yeah, that's the only reason. The Chiefs have been there before and they've got the rings. But again, as a Kansas City resident, I can tell you that there's a lot of people in this town who fear the Bills more than any other team out there in the league probably because they know how close they've been. They know what Josh Allen can do. He's really, for my money, the only quarterback in the league who's on the same level as Patrick Mahomes in terms of throwing the football and running it and doing the things. Lamar Jackson is great, but I think he is – I think Patrick and Josh are tied 1A, 1B in terms of overall talent. And so when you have those factors, I think people feel like the Bills are super close and probably should have won a couple of these games, to be honest with you. I think that's the sense you get. And I know people in Kansas City can't stand the Bengals, but they have a lot of respect for the Bills and a lot of fear of the Bills. And if not for a couple things in the last couple of years, that 13-second game back in 21, it could be the Bills sitting here talking about having been the champions of the AFC for the last couple of years. So, yeah, I think that they're really tight, and I do kind of feel as if the Bills probably have a better chance of winning this year just because the Chiefs have come down a run.
We always have the story coming out as well as the teams get into like week 14, 15 of the regular season that there's always, I mean, 4 new teams in the playoff kind of pool. There's always 4 teams that fall out, 4 teams that are. Do you have any on like fast rising teams or maybe unexpected drops in teams? I mean, certainly there's a couple of likely candidates out there, but we're hoping the Bills aren't one of those teams that fall out of the playoff scene, right? So, what are some of the teams you think maybe have run their course and are going to drop back to the pack, and maybe some unexpected teams get into the mix?
Well, the Steelers have got to be high on a list like that just because they don't have a quarterback right now. The quarterback they're courting, you don't know what kind of problems he's going to create for them. Is he going to be able to play at a high level? Is he going to be a headache? And so they've been able to ride the Mike Tomlin, never have a losing season train for a long time. But I think this is the end of that run. I think it's going to be hard for them to compete in the AFC. The Houston Texans are a team I think can take a step back just because new offensive coordinator, new offensive line. That's never an easy transition. And you saw some of the problems they went through last year protecting C.J. Stroud. So that was one that was hard to watch. As far as teams coming up, I'm big on the Bears. I think that with Ben Johnson coming in there from Detroit, run that offense and maybe help Caleb Williams out, the moves they made in the offseason, rebuilding their offensive line, going out and getting Colson Loveland and Luther Burden in the draft, that makes a big difference for them. It's not crazy to think Atlanta, by the way, could be in that mix too, because they're playing in a division that's not that strong in the NFC South. Michael Penix stepping in for Kirk Cousins. If Kirk Cousins had not been turnover crazy at the end of last season, they probably would have won that division easily. So I think if Penix can take advantage of the weapons around him and not throw interceptions, they're probably a playoff team.
Last one I've got for you, Jeffrey, concerns, teams that have gone through coordinator changes. We saw the Bills experience this, losing Brian Dable to a head coaching job and parting ways with Leslie Frazier. And there was some bumps in the road there. They were still able to be a playoff football team, but it was difficult. The transition was not easy in the next year. The Eagles crawled into the playoffs after losing both of their coordinators to head coaching jobs. Now the Lions are undergoing it this year. What do you feel, the future holds for them in this particular season? And from what I understand, is not an easy schedule and playing in a better division than they were when they first emerged as a playoff team.
That division is a killer division because every team has got a right to think they can win it and make a deep playoff run. Every team's got a really good quarterback or a quarterback they hope can be really good. But you're right, Detroit losing Ben Johnson and losing Aaron Glenn, those are huge losses. The thing I will say about Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, the general manager, that I think has proven to be pretty accurate is that when they started building that team, and I saw them in year one, what was most impressive about them was the coaches that they picked, and not just the guys that I just mentioned, but some of the guys like Mark Brunell coaching the quarterbacks, and some of the guys who were coaching. Deuce Staley was on that staff, and Antoine Randall L was coaching receivers. A lot of guys who were ex-players who had great respect around the league. And people forget that Ben Johnson was not the offensive coordinator when he started there. They got rid of Staley and they promoted him. And so I feel like Dan Campbell's got a pretty good eye for coaching talent. And they've got a pretty good culture there in terms of the talent they have and the expectation of how they play. They may not be a 15-win team this season because of those losses, which are substantial. But I do think they're still a playoff team and probably the best team in the NFC North because of how Dan Campbell coaches and the way he emboldens the people around him. So I don't think it's going to be a train wreck like what you saw in Philadelphia, but it's certainly going to be harder for them to just dominate and be the top team in the NFC again.
Jeffrey, good stuff. Thanks for spending some time with us. Really appreciate you.
No problem, guys. Thank you.